Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're going to take a nice, slow drift into the life of a man who sort of accidentally started one of the world's biggest spiritual traditions. A guy who was born in a palace, surrounded by silks, perfumes, and very sheltered luxury, and then said, "Yeah, no thanks." That man, of course, is Siddhartha Gautama. You know him better as the Buddha, the enlightened one. The calm face you've probably seen on meditation apps and incense packages. But behind that perfectly serene statue was once a very human prince, with parents who overprotected him to an almost comical degree, and a life story that, let's be honest, sounds like the ultimate rebellion against helicopter parenting. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's glide back to northern India about 2.5 millennia ago, where our story begins. Siddhartha was born in the 5th or maybe 6th century BCE, which is historians speak for. We don't actually know exactly when, but we'll pretend we do. His father was King Suddhodana, ruler of the Sakya clan. That makes Siddhartha basically a small-scale royal, not an emperor of India or anything flashy, but still a boy growing up with all the luxuries of nobility. His mother, Queen Maya, had what might be the most famous pregnancy dream in all of ancient history. According to the tradition, she dreamed that a white elephant carrying a lotus flower entered her side. Not the most comfortable-sounding dream, but symbolic enough that priests later nodded very seriously and said, "Oh yes, that means the child will be very special." Ancient symbolism loved elephants. And of course, right after his birth, wise men were brought in to examine the baby, as though he was some kind of royal iPhone prototype. They concluded that little Siddhartha would either become a great king or a great holy man. You can imagine his dad, King Suddhodana, hearing this and immediately saying, "Yeah, we're going to make sure it's the king option." Thanks. This is where the overprotection begins. The king decided that if his son ever saw suffering, sickness, old age, death, he might get spooked and go the holy man route. So, in the grand tradition of kings everywhere making terrible parenting choices, he tried to shield the boy from reality. No sadness, no ugliness, no pain. Just endless gardens, music, dancing girls, and apparently 3 different palaces for the seasons. Because why not? But as you might guess, this plan was about as effective as hiding vegetables from a toddler. Eventually, Siddhartha would notice that life outside the palace walls wasn't quite so Instagram perfect. Before that awakening, though, young Siddhartha grew up in the palace with every comfort imaginable. He had luxury, education, and of course, the classic arranged marriage. At the age of 16, he married his cousin, Princess Yasodhara. Because in royal families, who else would you marry but your cousin? It was the historical version of keep it in the family. And despite what the king hoped, Siddhartha was already showing signs of not being that into palace life. He was thoughtful, quiet, and not particularly thrilled with endless parties. But hey, duty called, so he played along. He became a father when Yasodhara gave birth to their son, Rahula. His name literally means fetter or chain. Which, subtle. Imagine naming your kid Ball and Chain. Not exactly screaming enthusiasm for fatherhood, right? Now, around this time, Siddhartha finally got a glimpse of the real world. The famous 4 sights. The palace guards probably weren't thrilled about this, but sometimes you just can't hide reality forever. The first thing he saw was an old man, frail, bent over, obviously not having a great time. And Siddhartha, who had apparently never seen anyone age before, was like, "Wait. That happens to all of us? Even princes?" His charioteer, trying to sound casual, said, yeah. Aging's kind of a package deal being human. Next, Siddhartha saw a sick man, covered in sores and clearly suffering. Again, mind blown. He asked, "So, this too is part of life?" "Yes," said the charioteer, probably wishing he could go back to not explaining human biology to a 20-something prince. Then came the corpse, a dead body, carried to cremation. This was the full existential crisis moment. The prince realized that death was not just some rare event. It was universal. He too would die someday, no matter how many palaces he had. Finally, Siddhartha saw a wandering ascetic, a holy man who had renounced possessions, calmly walking with nothing but a begging bowl. And for the first time, Siddhartha thought, maybe that guy knows something the rest of us don't. So there you have it. Aging, sickness, death, and enlightenment-seeking hermits. The four sights that completely wrecked his sheltered worldview. At this point, Siddhartha decided palace life was basically a shallow distraction. His father, of course, was horrified. The entire keep him away from suffering plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making Siddhartha a great worldly king, it just made him more determined to find some deeper meaning in life. So one night, the prince did the ultimate royal mic drop. While his wife and baby son slept, he quietly left the palace. The historians describe it like this was some great, dramatic midnight escape. In reality, it was probably more like a very privileged guy quietly saying, "You know what? I'm out," and walking away from his inheritance. This is called the Great Renunciation. Siddhartha gave up his royal robes, cut his hair, and set off into the forest like a spiritual college dropout. And here's where his story gets both admirable and slightly ridiculous. Because once Siddhartha became a wandering seeker, he did what many seekers in ancient India did. He tried out the whole starve yourself until you're enlightened routine. He studied with teachers who promised secret wisdom. He practiced extreme asceticism. Basically, he lived on almost nothing, pushing his body to the edge. The texts even describe him as becoming so thin that his ribs stuck out like old rafters. His spine looked like a knotted cord. Not exactly the serene Buddha statue image, right? Imagine the Instagram selfies he could have taken. Day 47 of starving myself, still not enlightened. But here's the twist. After years of this, Siddhartha realized it wasn't working. The pain, the weakness, the constant hunger, none of it brought him any closer to truth. He was just miserable. So, in a move that probably shocked his fellow ascetics, he decided to eat. Yes, the great breakthrough was eating a bowl of rice pudding. A village girl offered it to him, and instead of saying, "No, I must continue starving for wisdom," he said, "You know what? Thanks. I'll take it." This was his big middle way moment, the realization that neither extreme indulgence nor extreme self-denial was the path. Balance was the way. And so, Siddhartha sat down under a Bodhi tree, determined not to get up until he figured it out. No more teachers, no more extreme diets, no more running away. Just sit, breathe, think, and hopefully wake up to the truth. And according to the tradition, that's exactly what he did. After a long night of deep meditation, Siddhartha achieved enlightenment. He saw the nature of suffering, its cause, and the way to overcome it. In short, he became the Buddha. Now, I know that sounds very lofty, but in practical terms, he basically realized